Hi there, this is the Back to the Table podcast. On today's episode, our featured game is Ulm, and we'll be introducing 2 new segments. Thanks for checking us out. Once again, this is the Back to the Table board gaming podcast, a podcast about the games that are already on your shelf. I'm Jessica, and this is my co-host and singular husband, Bryce.
Singular husband? As if there was a question about that?
Well, in an earlier take that nobody else heard but us, I called you my co-husband.
Well, now they know about the other take.
Yeah.
Podcasting is fun, isn't it? But yeah, like Jessica said, we are talking about the game Ulm, just one of the many board games out there about a town with a port somewhere during the medieval era. Jessica, I gotta tell you, I think somewhere there is a guy who designs board games and a historian looking through old textbooks, finding towns in Europe during the medieval era and going, how can we make a game about them?
I imagine it's the same guy, and he's throwing darts, just seeing where they land.
And just going, oh, do they have a port town? Let's do it. Let's make a game about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Ulm separates itself from the rest, because there are a lot of them.
There sure are, and it sure will. And you know what else will be interesting? The 2 new segments that we have on today's episode.
Yes, we're a growing show. We're trying stuff. Also, I guess, throwing darts at the wall and seeing what sticks. Hopefully they do. Before we get to that, though, we have Ulm. This was released in 2016 by R&R Games. At least our copy is from R&R Games. Gunther Burkhardt is the designer. Michael Menzel is the artist. The mechanisms for this game are area influence, set collection, resource management, and Jessica, here's some interesting ones: action slide and action bias. These are not something you hear in everyday board gaming.
Yeah, I don't think I've actually heard of either of those. Can you tell us a little bit about what those mean?
Sure. Action slide, according to Board Game Geek, because I had to look it up myself, game pieces sliding across the board to initiate game elements, which Ulm definitely has that. And then action bias is any kind of game that uses directional movement. So pieces moving down a track or items sliding around, anything like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely uses those mechanisms. So we're going to get into a deeper discussion about the game Ulm, but first, we're going to try out our brand new segment, the first of 2. We're calling it First Impressions. So this new segment is called First Impressions, which might strike you as odd, given that our podcast in general is about games you're getting back to the table, things you've played multiple times. But this is just an interesting opposite to that, where we're talking about a game we've only played once and just giving you our very first impression. And this might be an interesting contrast if we later end up doing an episode about this game after we've had several plays and gotten it back to the table, to see what we think of it then versus our first impression.
Absolutely, and you know what? There's always room in this hobby for a new game, or at least a game new to you. And that's what we're trying to do here. Today, our first impression is on the game Timbertown. Released just last year in 2025, Timbertown puts 2 players against each other as they compete as architectural beavers, competing to build the best town along the river.
Timbertown is just for 2 players. You're on opposite sides of the same river, drafting tiles as they float down the river and putting them into your own 4x4 grid. Each tile is a building with a corresponding color. Each color represents a type of building that has a specific scoring condition that tells you how you want to place that in relation to other buildings in your grid. So you're just trying to maximize your placement in a way that will get you the most points. So my first impression of this game is that it's cute as heck, but it's teeny tiny. The artwork is very small. It's hard to see. The icons are hard to see. So it's a little bit tough on the eyes, but very, very cute.
Speak for yourself. My eyes are still fine. Your glasses are as thick as Coke bottles. I could see the art and the iconography and everything. I found the game to be pretty tricky, though, in the sense of the way you draft the tiles, because you have this 4x4 grid, like you said. Tiles are going to come down the river and they're going to float along, but you can't draft them into any particular column in your grid until they float over that section. So you might have your eye on something good, but you can't use it in, say, column 1 or 2. You got to wait for column 3, and you also got to hope that your opponent doesn't take it.
That is true. It's definitely a tricky feature, but the game does give you some tools to kind of get around that. So they have rafts that you can use to reserve tiles, or there's the crane, I believe, that allows you to draft a tile and put it into a different column rather than the one that it's lined up with.
Now, I found those really hard to get because you get them by drafting certain tiles, right? And that's what was so hard, because the tiles I needed weren't necessarily the tiles that were going to give me those special tools. In our first play, I watched you grab all those special tools and use them really, really well in these really creative, strategic ways. And I was just like, oh, what do I do? Because I just need this tile that gives me nothing except points at the end.
Yeah, I mean, the one benefit is the tiles that gave you the special tools, they are worth some points, but I think it's just like a flat 2 points per tile, whereas some of the other types of buildings give you a lot more points potentially if you strategically line them up and combine them with other building types.
Right. And I like that the game comes with various different goals per building. So you don't just have the same 5 or 6 goals, whatever, that you play with every time. And that's cool. It gives some variety to the game as well.
I will say I found it pretty tricky just kind of putting all the different scoring conditions together, especially when, I mean, you can use the same building to meet multiple different conditions, but they don't always necessarily make sense with each other. So you have to kind of make a Sophie's choice sometimes of like, which points are more important to me.
That's true. And I struggled to find the right buildings at the right time. And this is something you see in a lot of tile placement games. You're doing fine for a while, but then as you run out of space, you start to have to make, like you said, Sophie's choices. And in this game where columns score you points, you could derail your whole column with a bad placement.
And one thing we haven't mentioned yet is there are little boardwalk pathways on the tiles, and they have to actually line up with each other. And so that makes the placement even trickier because you're not just being strategic about which buildings you're placing next to each other. You have to also orient them in a way that they actually have pathways that connect.
I have a love-hate relationship with just about every tile drafting game we have. This game reminded me of the game Junk Drawer, which I love and hate at the same time because, like I said, once you start running out of room, your choices start to hurt you more and more if you don't have the tiles available. And it is kind of a defeating feeling when one whole column gets taken out because you couldn't draft the thing you wanted. You had to draft the thing that was available.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Sagrada a little bit in that way.
Oh, that too, yeah.
You're like working towards something where it's like, if I can get what I need, it's going to be points. But if I don't get what I need, it's like all that work I did was for nothing.
But it does play pretty quick, and I enjoyed it. I look forward to sitting down with you again and giving it another try. I liked it. Overall, I have no real serious complaints personally. I'm glad we picked it up. I'm glad we bought it, and I'm looking forward to playing it more and more.
Yeah, me too. I did really enjoy that one. I might have to get some better glasses or just turn the lights really bright, but I am looking forward to giving that one another play.
So there you go. That was Timbertown and our first impressions on it. Coming right up, we have the main event. We'll be talking about Ulm, taking a deep dive into this one. Should be a lot of fun. The city of Ulm is in its historic heyday. There is a constant hustle and bustle in the prosperous free imperial city. Trade in the works of art and commercial goods such as wine, wood, salt, and textiles is flourishing. For the most part, these goods are shipped by barge or raft on the Danube River. The influential guilds and patricians dominate city life, and if you want to accomplish anything, you'll need to be in their good graces. In Ulm, players work to expand their spheres of influence across town. Managing your resources strategically, you'll travel down the Danube River, lending your hand in the marketplace, property, and the famous Ulm Cathedral, all in the name of joining the illustrious circles of the town. Will you make your lasting mark on this cultural mecca of medieval Europe? Alright, Jess, before we talk about the game Ulm, let's first talk about its stats. What's this game rockin'?
Coming from Board Game Geek, we have a geek rating of 7.0. Currently ranked at 1597 with a strategy rank of 863. Has a complexity rating of 2.7 out of 5. It's rated for ages 10 plus. It has a player count of 2 to 4, but people vote that it's best at 3. Current price, you can find this one for around $20 new, $12 to $15 used. This one actually broke the top 1,000 in rankings and the top 500 in strategy when it was first released, but it's been steadily declining in both ranking and strategy since it's been released.
Well, all right, and we'll talk about all those stats and if the game deserves better, worse, or it's right on target at the end of this conversation. The object of this game is a very simple one: be the most influential resident within the bustling town of Ulm.
In order to achieve this, you're going to travel down the Danube River, expand your influence in every section of town, aid in construction of various buildings, including the famous Ulm Minster Cathedral.
So I would say the heart of Ulm, the thing that really makes it go, is in the way you choose your actions. There is a 3x3 grid, and on this grid, you're going to have a bunch of different tiles representing the different actions you can take. And you're going to pull a tile randomly from a bag, and you're going to go, okay, there's an action, and you're going to slide it up or into one of the columns or rows on that grid, and then the 3 new tiles, those will be your actions for the turn. That's pretty cool.
There's a fixed number of things that you can do, right? Each of them represented by one of these tiles. But every turn is going to be a different combination, and what's available to you is going to depend not only on what you pull out of the bag, but on what's already on the grid and then where you put it in relation to those other tiles.
Right, and once you push a row or column in a direction, the old tile that was in there is going to slide out into a reserve, and then nobody else can push a tile that way until that reserve is cleared. And there is a way to do it, but until somebody does clear out reserves, you have more limited options of which way you can go on that grid, so the decision making gets a little trickier.
One of the actions you can take actually is to clear those tiles from the reserve. So that's actually one of the tiles itself, is to clear the tiles from the reserve. And when you clear them, you get to take them and keep them. But you can only clear one side at a time. So it's either the left side, the right side, the top, or the bottom. So you're still leaving limited options. And when you're choosing which side to clear from, you've got a balance between, okay, which one of these tiles do I want to keep versus what actions do I want to make available for myself? Or, am I making them available to somebody else before I'll even get an opportunity to use them again?
That's true. And another interesting thing about the grid is as you slide actions up and down, you create new tracks of actions for your opponents to take advantage of. So all the other players are kind of watching what everyone's doing and going, how can I, maybe take advantage of that row or that column? Or it's an interesting way to select actions for sure. Let's keep the conversation going about actions. Let's talk about that river. You start the game on the river, your little boat, and throughout the course of the game, you're going to be moving them from one side of the board on the river to the other through all the different provinces on the board that are separated by lines. They're kind of hard to see, but they're there. The starting space is worth negative 11 points, and the spaces all the way up to the halfway point are worth negative points. And then once you get across that halfway point, they start to become worth positive points. So moving down that river, along from being what you need to do in the game, obviously has some advantages.
The river also dictates which seals you can place. So that's another one of the actions that you have is you can take one of your seals and put it on these various different kind of town actions in the provinces. But which actions are available to you depend on where your boat is located. So those lines that you were talking about that you can't really see, that's going to tell you, okay, I'm in this section or I'm in this section, and these are the options that I could possibly take.
And there's a lot of options out there on the board, depending on which province you're in. But these seals you were talking about, they do take coins. So one of the actions you can take too is to grab a coin. But assuming you have enough coins to pay for the seals, you can get them on the board. And the stuff ranges too. So early on in the game, you'll see spaces that allow you to place your family crests onto certain buildings. So the way your family crests work is if you put a seal on that space, you're going to draw from a stack of tiles, and these tiles will represent the various building spaces on the board. And so you'll be able to choose one of those. You'll get some benefits from it, and then you'll put your seal on that building on the board, so long as it's gold rimmed. There are silver rimmed buildings and gold rimmed buildings, right?
Yeah, so the silver ones just give you points, but the gold ones are what you're talking about.
And so that building you have your family crest on will have a seal space next to it, or maybe multiple seal spaces next to it. The cool thing about that is the next time somebody puts a seal space on that building that you control, you get points for that.
And the other piece of that is the sparrow tokens. So there's little miniature pictures of those same buildings around the action grid. And you also get to put a seal on the one that matches the crest that you took. So if somebody pushes a tile towards that seal that you placed, now you get a sparrow token. And the sparrow tokens are cool because those let you trade out the action tile that you drew from the bag in case you want to use something different.
But you don't just get to trade it like from the bag, like back into the bag and out of the bag. There's a reserve pool of action tiles laid out at the start of the game. And as people use their sparrow tokens to trade them, that pool's going to change. So at the start, it has, one of every action. But then as people start to use it, you might end up having all of one type of action.
That's true. The one good thing about the sparrow tokens too, though, is that if you don't end up wanting to use them because what's available in the loading dock is what that reserve is called. If what's available in the loading dock doesn't appeal to you, you can hold on to those sparrow tokens and they're worth points at the end of the game.
So as you move along the river, you're going to come across other spaces that allow you to put your seals on them. Most of them, honestly, though, are like immediate points or some sort of immediate effect based on what's going on the board. But aside from the family crest, there's also the descendants. These are going to be like, I don't know, how would you describe them? Bonus workers, like workers that you put in your reserve?
Yeah, I think they're supposed to be characters that give you helpful abilities that enhances the actions that already exist within the game.
Right. And so these guys will give you an array of different abilities. Depending on which one you choose, you'll be able to move down the river an extra space. One gives you an extra coin. One allows you to decide which action tiles you want to take out of the bag. You get your choice to draw two, choose one, and just an array of different things like that. So the last action in the game is the card action. And when you take this action, you have the option of either drawing cards from the deck or playing cards you already have from your hand.
Right. So to draw cards from the deck, you have to spend action tiles. And to play cards, you would just play the card right out of your hand. And you also get a free play a card action every turn, which just is a little confusing, but that's separate from the action tiles. But you can only draw cards with that card action tile, and you have to, again, spend action tiles to get cards. So every card has two different purposes, and there's the immediate effect, which a lot of them, for the immediate effect, you have to spend a specific action tile, or it might be two different options of specific action tiles that you could spend one or the other in order to use that immediate effect, or you can play it for the end game effect, which is typically a scoring condition.
The cards are a big way to generate points, too, throughout the course of the game, either by completing the task once you get the card or by collecting sets, because in this deck there are different merchants that sell different things, and if you can collect sets of those merchants, you'll get points at the end of the game. And then there's also the cathedral cards, which by themselves are worth a certain number of points, but then if you put that set together and build the whole cathedral, you'll score a ton of points at the end of the game there too. We didn't talk about how the game progresses. It goes round by round, 10 rounds total, and the way you track it is these little tiles that you slide into this church piece. It's the Ulm Cathedral that you build. It's made of cardboard, but you build and it stands up above the board. And you're going to take one of these little tiles and slide it down into this little compartment in the church to know that you're on round 1, round 2, round 3. If you want to play an advanced variant, you flip these tiles over and each of them now will have a different round effect. Sometimes it will have an effect that works in your benefit, like it'll make things cost less, but sometimes it will make things cost more too. So it varies round by round.
So you're putting your action tile into the grid and taking those actions, doing your seals, playing your cards, moving down the river, and all of that for 10 rounds. And at the end of those 10 rounds, you add up all your points, and whoever has the most points is the winner.
Now, if there is a tie, you're going to look on the board, and whoever has the most seals on the board will take the tiebreaker. If that is still tied, well, then you just share the victory.
Sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
All right, so now that we've talked about how the game works and how you win, let's get into a deeper strategy sesh about not just tips for winning or playing well, but ways to maximize the different turns and the different actions and make all of the different elements of the game work to your advantage. The first thing I would say is you definitely want to use those seals early and often to benefit you later in the game. There's a lot of different seal actions that are available to you, and there's different things that they do, but the ones that are earlier in the game, especially those coat of arms one that allows you to put your coat of arms out there in different spots, those really can benefit you and rack up the points later on. So you want to take advantage of those in the beginning while you are in the part of the river that allows you to.
That's for sure. And, the first time you play this, you might think, I want to move along the river as fast as possible. But anytime you move out of a zone, you no longer can go back and put your seals on there. So it's definitely beneficial to take your time along the river somewhat to make sure you get your seals where you want them. Because once you pass it, it's gone.
Yeah, and that actually comes down to if you're doing a boat action and a seal action in the same turn, think carefully about what order you're going to take those actions in, because I've definitely seen it happen where you move your boat first and then you're like, oh crap, I wanted to take that seal action and now it's no longer available to me.
Before we go any further, I just want to give you the first tip that I wrote down because I think it's important. Be prepared for a lot of randomness and be prepared to adjust your gameplay accordingly. This game is really random. From the action tile you pull out of the bag, to what you have left after all the other players have taken their last turn, to what cards you draw out of that deck, to what descendants will be available at the beginning of the game. There is so much randomness in this game for essentially a Euro. It's kind of surprising in a way because, most Euros try to eliminate randomness. This one has a ton, so you have to be prepared for that, and you have to be prepared to adjust round by round.
Absolutely. And speaking of round by round and randomness, really, in the advanced variant, those different round features that come up on those cathedral tiles, those really can totally screw with you. And I think you have to make sure that you're tailoring your strategy to what's going on in the round. If it's making the coin action give you an extra coin, then maybe you want to do something different than what you'd originally planned so you can take advantage of that. Or if it's making something cost a lot more, maybe you want to hold off on taking that action until the next round because you don't want to overspend resources.
The name of the game when you play the advanced variant for sure is a lean into whatever the round is giving or taking from you. You talked about laying your seals out on the board. I wanted to talk about one specific space in general, because if you can get your seal on here, you're going to do really, really well. It's towards the end of the board. It's called, I'm probably going to butcher this, I don't speak German, the Reichenauer Hof space. What this space does is award you a point for every single seal you've put on the board thus far, including that one. By the time you get to the end of the game, or at least to that spot near the end, you should have at least 7 or 8 seals out there on the board. And that's a lot of points in this game in one turn.
That's true. And if you can manage to put more than one seal on that spot, you're just racking up a ton of points. And there's a limited number of seal spots. So you're also potentially blocking your opponents from getting those points as well.
And you know, that space will especially be beneficial if you get your family crest on it early on in the game. But again, it's random. You take that action. You might draw that building. You might not. Let's move on to the cards for a second. I want to see what you thought about this. I think it's more beneficial to take the immediate effect of every card and not try to collect the sets.
Oh, hot take.
Well, let me explain. The cathedral cards, for example, if you can collect all 3 of the pieces, you get 18 points at the end of the game. But if you turn the card in and use its immediate effect, it gives you 6 points anyway.
Right. Whereas if you just lay it down for an endgame scoring and it's not part of the complete set, it's only worth 3 points. So you're right. It's worth more points if you play it for the immediate effect.
Now, you do have to keep in mind the immediate effect does come with a cost. You have to turn something in to get those points or whatever, but the odds of you drawing all 3 of those cathedral cards are pretty slim, especially when everyone else is pulling from that deck, because there's a finite number of the cards in there. Same goes with all of them, really. Some of the cards don't repeat any more than once. There's just one copy of a card in there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The merchant cards, I think, are a little bit different because they don't give you points. They give you, I think you move up on the river and you get some coins.
But I would take advantage of that more than trying to collect them, because there's other cards in the deck that give you scoring opportunities at the end of the game that are more fruitful.
I mean, it depends a little bit on what card you get, too. I mean, if you don't have the tiles to spend to be able to get that immediate effect, you might as well lay it down for the end game scoring if it's worth something, because that's better than nothing, right? But in general, you're probably right that it makes a lot more sense to use those immediate effects to your advantage. If you have an opportunity, another seal space that's really valuable is the one with the Descendants. If there's a good one, there's not always good ones available. You mentioned that there's, it's random which ones come out, and they're not all good, but some of them really do give you a major advantage. And if you are able to do that, you want to definitely take advantage of maximizing those abilities.
I think they're worth passing up, though, if everybody else got the good ones. I wouldn't just take the last one remaining just to have them, because they're not worth anything at the end. And if they don't do anything for you, or the thing they do for you requires you to set it up in a certain way, well, that just hurts your game. So yeah, if there's a good one, I would say definitely take it. But in order to take advantage of the good ones first, you have to move down the river and get to that section before other people do. And moving down the river, it's very critical, because you don't want those negative points, but also at the end of the board, if you can get all the way to the end, you get 11 points if you land on the last space, but you also get all these cool free actions as you move on to the last spaces on the board. So you do want to move down that river, strategically, carefully place your seals, but definitely move down that river. Furthermore, I would say take advantage of other people's placement on the river, because in the game, if you go to land on a spot that somebody's already on, you just move ahead. So you can kind of leapfrog your way ahead instead of having to take river action after river action after river action.
That's true. And that works out really well in a 4-player game. If you're really far behind everyone, you can actually jump ahead of all 3 other players if you play your cards right. Figuratively, it's not a card. But if you strategically time out those river actions, you can jump really far ahead without having to do too many of the actions.
You don't want to be left behind either, because then every river action only moves you 1 space. Without the leapfrogging and you fall behind, it can be very, very hard to catch up while also doing everything else you need to do. So if everybody else is kind of in one spot on the river, I think you kind of want to be there too.
Yeah, being behind everyone could be an advantage if you're right behind. But if you're several spaces behind, then you're just stuck and you're not going to catch up.
Well, you mentioned like take your time early on and place the seals you want to play, and that's true, but be mindful of how everyone's moving down the river. Be first if you can at the end, but definitely do not get left behind.
One thing I almost always forget, or I did the first few times I played this game, is the sparrow tokens. Those sparrow tokens can really come in handy. And it really depends on what's available in the loading dock, which again comes back to your be prepared for randomness thing, because you could end up with they're all the same exact thing and it's not something that you want. But if there's something out there that might be better than what you pulled out of the bag, remember that you can trade a sparrow token to trade your action tile for something in the loading dock, which could really completely change the outcome of your turn.
And if nothing else, they're worth points at the end of the game, which could be the deciding factor for you, because this game can get really tight score-wise sometimes.
It brings up an interesting point about the next tip that I was going to say, which maybe is kind of the opposite of what I was going to say. But when you push out your action tile and somebody has a seal in that spot we mentioned, they would get a sparrow token if you push your tile towards their seal. And so a lot of times when you're playing, you'll be thinking, oh, well, I don't want to do that action because I don't want to give the opponent a sparrow token. So my tip is don't worry too much about that. It's much more important that you're taking the actions that are going to maximize what you need to do on your turn, because you only get 10 turns. But at the same time, if there's an opportunity to do what you need to do without giving someone else a sparrow token, you should definitely take advantage of that, because, as you said, those couple of points from the sparrow tokens could mean the difference between winning and losing the game.
I only got one more, but I want to save it for last because I think it'll help put a bow on it. So if you got any more, go ahead.
I just have one more. Hopefully it's not the same one that you're going to say.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah. So the last one I have is play a card every turn if you can. And at the beginning of the game, this isn't as relevant because you don't start the game with any cards. But towards the end of the game, I think it just makes sense to play cards. Even if you don't have the action tile to be able to get the immediate effect, it'll at least be worth something at the end of the game. Whereas cards that are still in your hand are not worth anything at the end of the game.
They're expensive, though, the cards. They can be very tricky to get because you do have to make sure you have action tiles. Sometimes you need to make sure you have the right action tile, and it's not always available. So you want to keep that in mind. I think you're right when you said play the cards. You do want to play them. Just make sure you have a way to afford them and it's not hurting you in some other way in order to make that happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have them. If you have the cards, definitely play them.
Well, no, what I mean is like you don't want to go, oh, I need to play a card. Let me forfeit this river action space I need in order to do it. The river action might be better.
Well, you get to play a card for free every time, though.
Oh, you're talking about the free action. I see.
Yeah.
I thought you meant the okay, never mind what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm talking about the free one, not the card actions, but the free card, play a card action. Take advantage of that if you have cards to play.
All right, so let me give you my last one. Keep the rule books handy. And yes, I said rule books. This game is split into two separate rule books, and they are written in various different languages. So you do have to find the language you speak in the book, and you're going to want to keep it handy because your first couple of games, a lot of iconography. There's a lot of things where you're like, wait a minute, what does that mean? I need an explanation on this card. And then you're also going to have to go back and forth between rule books because some will give you the explanation on the cards, some will explain how the cards are played. It's not really in a cohesive order. It's kind of all over the place. So keep those rule books handy. And if you do that, you're going to be all right, probably.
That's a really good point. Yeah, we definitely referenced both of the rule books probably a dozen times, even on like the third and fourth time we were playing. That just about wraps it up on the strategy sesh. In just a moment, we will talk about our thoughts on the game and have a more general discussion about our opinions. But first, let's hear a little bit about the real-life city of Ulm. Located along the Danube River in the southern end of Germany, the city of Ulm has seen more than a millennium of European history and played its biggest role in shaping that history during the medieval era. Here are roughly five facts about the real-life city of Ulm, the source of inspiration for today's featured game. The first historical record of Ulm dates back to the year 854 in a prayer recited for the benefit of some of the town's wealthy residents, or perhaps even the local royalty at the time. By the year 1184, Ulm was documented as a free imperial city, meaning they still operated under the authority of the German Empire, but unofficially they were a nation unto themselves, with their own charters, laws, and even a constitution. This unique freedom during the Middle Ages gave Ulm room to grow and thrive it did. By the year 1500, the city was in its cultural and economic prime. Ulm served as a major European port city for goods such as iron, textiles, salt, wood, and wine. It was also one of the most important centers for art in its region, specifically for religious art and sculptures. It also grew in political influence as well, being home to the Swabian League, a powerful 15th and 16th century military alliance. Ulm's influence in Europe would begin to dwindle during the 30 Years' War between 1618 and 1648. Aside from the heavy economic and territorial impacts from the war, the discovery of the Americas played a role as well. Trading along riverways in Europe was not nearly as lucrative as trading across the seas during the growing expansion of colonialization in the New World. As Ulm's economic power dwindled, so too did its cultural and political power. While its influential heyday came to a close more than 400 years ago, the city of Ulm has not entirely given up on making history, most notably in 1879 when its most famous resident was born. Albert Einstein, the father of general relativity and arguably the most influential physicist to ever exist, called the city of Ulm home for the first 15 years of his life. Without a doubt, the most famous piece of Ulm is its massive Gothic wonder, the Ulm Minster Cathedral. Construction began in the year 1377 with some of Germany's best masons at the helm. While progress was steady at first, by the 1490s, needed renovations began to supersede further construction, and Ulm's embrace of the Reformation in the 1530s forced a massive overhaul in design as the church switched from Catholic to Lutheran. By 1543, construction would come to a standstill for more than 300 years. In 1844, the city began a new push to finish the cathedral, which was finally completed in the late 1880s. It was a centuries-long endeavor encapsulating the awe-inspiring Gothic-era architecture like nothing else. The seemingly endless array of statues, figures, scenes, towers, pillars, beams, sparrows, and gargoyles is a literal feast for the eyes, and definitely worth looking up if you've never seen it. But the city wasn't done with it yet. In 1890, funds were collected to build a steeple that was to surpass every other church in the world. To this day, the Ulm Minster holds the record for the world's tallest church. Bryce, go ahead and start us off. Tell us what you thought about Ulm.
I'm really conflicted. I really am. This game is... there's a lot to like. There seems to be a lot to dislike, and I gotta be honest, maybe this conversation will help. I don't quite know where I land on this one. I'll start by complimenting the game. The action selection grid, I think, is awesome. I really like it. It's a very clever way in picking actions. You don't see anything like that. I haven't seen anything like that. So the idea you pull this thing from the bag and you get to choose what actions you want, it's cool.
Yeah, I like the action grid also. That was one of the things that I kind of wrote down when I was taking notes before this episode. I agree with that. I have a lot more that I don't like about it, which I think...
Okay, so I'm not alone.
I don't think you are.
It's the random factor in a game that is most absolutely a Euro, right? It's very Euro in the way you have to select the proper action at the right time and manage your resources and, do all these things that are very much like skill-driven Euro, and yet they throw all the luck in the world at you. The tile you draw from the bag, random. The cards you get, random. Maybe you don't get the cathedral card you need, but because you drew cards, the next guy gets the cathedral card you need. And it's just entirely out of your hands. And it's kind of a weird feel, given that it's a Euro and you're supposed to play cleverly and tightly and all of that. But the randomness, and then it just clashes for me.
Yeah, I think the randomness, it makes it less fun, especially when it comes to the advanced variant. I think the fact that it can either help or hurt you, I hate that. I feel like most kind of advanced modules that I've experienced in other games, it's either like this adds to the complexity, period, or this makes it harder, period. But this is like a weird thing where it's like, maybe it's going to be easier this round, and maybe if you don't pay 5 coins by the end of the round, you lose points. Or I don't think that's
no.
Exactly
There is a tile. There is a tile
like
that you have to pay an X amount of coins by the end of the round, or you do lose points.
Yeah, I don't think it's 5 coins. That would be crazy excessive. But yeah, it's something like that. I think there's a couple of tiles that are similar to that, where it's just like, dude, what the heck? Where did this come from? You're just giving an extra hard thing just for the sake of an extra hard thing.
To continue on with the randomness, the Descendants. We said that they're played or they're drawn randomly at the start of the game. Some of them are great. Some of them are just awful. Like the Descendant that allows you to move down the river 1 extra space, that's a crucial element of the game. Moving down the river is a crucial element. You want that. But then there's one guy who's like, if the action tiles line up in a specific way, you're going to get a point.
Yeah, and it's only on your turn. So if you manage to make the action grid so that there's 3 in a row of the same action tile, you get like 1 point. First of all, that like never happens. And secondly, if you're spending all your time trying to make that happen, the points you get from it compared to what you lose from not actually paying attention to your strategy, it's not a good tile.
And going back to the randomness, I mean, the game requires a lot of focus for what could potentially be absolutely zero payoff. I'm going to talk about the way the board looks. This might just be a me thing. I found it very busy and very hard to read the board. Like you're looking at it and you're trying to figure out what's actually a playable space and what's just artwork.
I would definitely agree with that. And it's also just not, I mean, it's not that it's bad artwork. It's just not, maybe because it's too busy, maybe because it's kind of like vintagey looking, but it's just not very aesthetically appealing. Like in general, I think it's kind of an ugly game.
See, I disagree with that. I think the art is good. I just think the artwork and the action spaces blend a little too well. So no matter how many times we've played this, I'm always having to like second guess, like, wait, where's the action? Oh, there it is.
That's true. It's kind of hard to tell where like the different seal actions are, where those lines are on the river that determine what seal actions you can play. Those are kind of hard to see. There's definitely a lot of stuff that sort of blends together. So I would absolutely agree with that. One thing I really don't like about this is the card thing. It confuses the crap out of me that you have a free action to play a card plus a card action that's an action tile. And the card action tile is the only action tile that has 2 different actions. All the other ones, it's one thing that you do every time. But the card action, it's either getting a card or playing a card. But then you also can play a card without having the action tile. And it's just confusing and hard to remember.
Well, it becomes easier to remember if you have the 2 rule books on hand. I hate the 2 rule books thing. I will say I like all the historical information that is in the rule book. I think that was really cool that they did that. I don't think we mentioned that before, but while you're waiting for your turn, you can flip through the rule book and read all these awesome historical facts about Ulm. That's great. But 2 rule books, very annoying.
It makes sense to have like a reference tool separate from the rule book.
Yes.
That would just be like, here's a list of the icons or here's a list of the cards and this is what they mean. But that's not what it is. It's like completely separate entire rule books.
Well, there's the icon appendix for one aspect of the game in one of the rule books, and then the other appendix is in the other rule book. And so you're constantly flipping back and forth, and then you have to like flip and find your language. And I get it, multi-language game, etc., but it's just kind of annoying when you're just trying to look up a rule and you're like, wait, no, that's the German. Nope, that's the French. Nope, that's the Dutch. Oh, there we go. Oh, wait, I'm in the wrong rule book. Let me go and do it again with the other one.
Yeah, it's like, it seems like it should be one rule book is just these are the rules of the game, and the other one is, okay, this is what the different icons mean or what the different cards do or whatever. But yeah, it's not that. They're kind of both mixed in, and there's some stuff where you're like, oh, this is a rule clarification. It should be in the rule book, but it's actually in the appendix rule book. It's super confusing.
It is. I want to go back to the cards for a second because I think the game puts a lot of emphasis on the cards. It's where you get a lot of points. There's a lot of moments in the game where it definitely feels like it wants you to draw and play cards. And I think there are times in the game where the cards overshadow everything else that you're doing. Like you said at the end of the game, you want to play cards. Sometimes you can, sometimes you need to purposely go after a card action that might not be to your benefit, but if I don't get this card played, I'm going to lose out on points. Given the fact that they can be so random, sometimes the idea of it playing such an overwhelming part of the game kind of feels like it's robbing you from the rest of the play.
Especially given how expensive they are. Because it's not easy to collect those action tiles. And then you have to have 2 matching tiles if you want to be able to look at 2 cards to choose from. And just if you're looking for something specific and there's so many different cards that are out there, it can just be a total waste of a bunch of turns or actions trying to get what you're looking for. And then it just has no payoff.
True, and this is why I said when we were talking strategy, the immediate effects are probably better than the set collection aspect. I think you can get more points doing the immediate effect, and if you're playing this for the first couple of times, the set collection almost feels kind of like a trap. Almost kind of like a slap in the face, like, hey, you spent your 10 turns trying to collect these sets, and guess what? You didn't win because somebody else randomly got better ones. So you should have taken the immediate points. You should have taken the immediate coins. And that can bring about a level of frustration. I think the set collection is a total trap, but the game kind of like makes suggestions that you should be collecting sets. It's kind of like, we're going to reward you with 18 points if you collect all 3 cathedral cards. But if I just turn in my cathedral cards for the immediate benefit, I can get 18 points pretty easy.
I think it's kind of twofold, right? If you can afford the immediate actions, I think with the merchant cards, because they always cost a tile. And towards the end of the game, you might not necessarily want to move your boat up in the river or things like that, the things that they give you. If you have the cards, like let's say you were fishing for something, or I don't know, you had to take a card action because that's what was available to you. If you have cards, you might as well play it to get something, right? Like, because you could either turn in the orange tile to do this thing, but you don't have that tile, or you just lay it down and it's worth 3 points at the end of the game. And if you happen to get the rest of the set between the next few turns, maybe it'll be worth more, but at least it's something. And I think that's one aspect that I guess is kind of redeeming about the cards, but then it also kind of makes it seem like, well, why are you putting all this work into it if you could just like lay it down and it's just whatever, you know?
Exactly. Like I said, I think the set collection's a trap. I've been really ragging on this game a lot in this discussion, but I got to tell you, there is something about it, and this is why I'm torn. There's something about this game that makes me want to keep coming back to it. I've enjoyed every play when it's said and done, even if during the game, it's really, really frustrating. And you know what? I'm going to compliment the game one more time here. The way it kind of forces you to do a little bit of everything, because it integrates another element of the game into a different one in order to pay for it. So for example, like you want to clear the action tiles because they help pay for cards, and you want to get your seal spaces on the board, but those cost coins, so you want to take a coin action. The way it integrates within itself like that is very clever. And I think that when you get a good round of actions, you feel clever, and I think it gives you just enough of that little dopamine to make you go, How clever can I be the next time? Or how can I make that randomness work for me in a clever way? And I think that's what it is that keeps me coming back to this one and wanting to play it despite all these things we just said about it.
I could see that. It's definitely one of those games where you have to balance everything. You can't just pick one aspect and win from that. You can't just do, okay, I'm only going to do seals or I'm only going to do cards. It's literally not possible.
But that's what makes a game a good one, when it forces you to think about everything. And yet there's that randomness, so it's frustrating. Jess, I'm very torn.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I do enjoy it. It sounds like I don't from the way that I talk about it. Like when I think about it, I'm like, and this is annoying and this is annoying and that's confusing. But I really do enjoy playing it. I think I just wish some things were a little bit more clear. I think it just could be maybe a little bit better of a version of itself. But it's not that I don't want to play this game. I just almost wish they had workshopped it a little bit more.
You know what it kind of reminds me of, now that I'm thinking about it?
What?
Slot machines at Vegas. It's got all the bright lights. It draws you in. There's a chance you're going to win big. There's a chance it's going to go your way. And then it's random as hell, and you're very frustrated. But because of all the lights and because of that one time where you hit it kind of big a couple of rounds ago, you're putting a coin into that machine again, and you're cranking that lever. And I feel like the 70-year-old guy sitting there in the slot machine all day, just coin, crank. If for no other reason, then it's kind of enjoyable, I guess, when you think about it. That's what this game feels like to me.
Well, there's a big difference, though, because when you're playing a slot machine, there's no strategy. There's no rhyme or reason. It's 100% you're just pushing a button. Whereas in this game, you really do have to think about what you're doing.
No, I was saying more so in like the appeal factor, not strategy play between the two games.
Right,
just
like
the way
that thing that keeps you coming back.
Yes, there is something in Ulm that keeps me coming back. And in round 5 of any particular game, I could be sitting there looking at you going, man, I can't stand this fucking game, dude. But by round 7, 8, or 9, I'm like, oh, this was enjoyable. I play this again.
I think I probably would continue to want to play this again. For all the frustrations, for all the confusions, you do find yourself. And one thing I'll say is I'm never round 8 or 9 or 10 of this like, God, is it over yet? Can it just be over? It's not one of those games. Like I'm always like, yes, that was a well-played game experience.
So safe to say we're not getting rid of it.
No, I don't think so.
No, me neither.
So you've heard enough about what we think. Let's talk about what some other people said.
A quick reminder, we get these comments off of Board Game Geek forums. We don't say who said them because they didn't volunteer it specifically to us. But in the future, if you have comments about any given game we talk about, let us know in the comment section from wherever you're listening, and we will give your name a shout and share what you thought. So diving into these forums, Jess, everybody seems to love the action selection grid, and why not? It is the coolest standout feature of the game.
I can't think of a single other game that does anything quite like it.
For as random as pulling a whatever tile out of the bag and then being stuck with that as your action is, and frustrated, whatever, the process of that, the exercise of using that grid is really cool. So I think everybody likes it. I agree with everybody there. There were a lot of compliments, too, on the artwork and the game components.
Interesting. So I guess everyone's on your side for that one. I'm not in as much agreement there, but
I liked the art. I mean, let's just compare it to a game like Zapotec, the one we covered last time. There's a lot going on in the city of Ulm, right? It's this bustling city. There's things happening, and when you're looking on the board, there's things happening all over the place. Whereas a game like Zapotec, there's kind of nothing happening, and it looks kind of plain and boring. My only complaint with the artwork is that I kind of can't tell where the actions are.
I guess that's just, it's subjective. It's art, right? But people tend to like it. And that's
what about
good
the
to know.
components? What do you think about those?
The components are fine. I mean, they're nice quality. They're not anything like spectacular, but I don't usually expect anything spectacular from a game like this.
I like the little boat pieces.
The boat pieces
Those
are pretty
nice.
cute, yeah. So some others, like Bryce, noted the randomness, but love the gameplay anyway.
See, they're stuck in the same damn place I am.
Yeah, there's something about it. There's something about it that just makes it appealing for all the frustration. I think it's probably just, I mean, it's unusual to see this level of randomness in a Euro like this, but I think it's probably just the right amount that it makes it okay.
It's that little dopamine hit that we were talking about when you get something to go your way or you cleverly maneuver through that randomness. And I think that's what gets people going, yeah, I want to play this again. I want to play this more.
Yeah, it's that adaptability that you have to have. And then when it works out for you, you're like, I freaking nailed that. That was awesome. And then you just feel really good. So I can totally see that. A lot of other people also did not like the 2 rule books. That's a pretty common complaint.
It's an annoying thing in any game. Any game that has 2 rule books, I'm already going, I don't think I want to play this.
I mean, we do want to play it, but initially looking at it, you're like, oh, that's going to be a pain in the butt.
So many preferred the higher player count. The space competition, they say, is vital, that with a lower player count, you tend to stay out of each other's way. Everyone gets the seals they want. You move down the river, you don't. It's not as big of a deal. The leapfrogging isn't as big of a factor. So people liked this at a higher player count.
I mean, they're not wrong. The play difference between 2 players and 4 players, it's almost a totally different game.
Yeah, there's a reason this game doesn't come with the solo mode, and I can understand that.
A lot of people said they would have liked to see more variety in the cards, which is interesting. I feel like there's already kind of a lot going on there.
It probably has something to do with the set collection being very bogus. Because if you look at some of the other cards, like the ones that give you immediate effects that aren't set collectors or the ones that have end of game scoring, if you had more of those, that might be more interesting than here, just collect a set.
That's true. Those actually, I can't remember what they called those ones. There was like a name for that category, but those were definitely a lot more interesting than the merchant cards or the cathedral cards. So it would have been interesting to see more of those. Someone suggested a trade mechanic between players to add texture and player interaction. I don't really feel like this is the game for that. Personally, I don't expect player interaction in a Euro game, and I don't really like free-for-all bartering in a game. Like, if there's a specific rule, like you can trade 1 for 1 the same thing or whatever, I'm totally for that. But I think it just gets a little crazy when it's like you could just trade whatever you feel like, you decide the terms, everybody has to agree. It just seems like anarchy to me.
Might slow the game down a bit too, because one of the things the game has going for it that we didn't mention that we should have was it doesn't take very long to play.
It is a very quick game. That's true. And I do think bartering could potentially slow it down quite a bit, I guess, depending on how far you let that go.
Yeah, interesting suggestion. I don't really have an opinion on it one way or the other. Seems interesting, though. Thematically sound, anyway. One last thing. This one made me laugh. Somebody called this a gateway game.
I don't know if I can see the logic of that. I mean, gateway games, there's a lot of different games that a lot of people call gateway games. I would never think a game with 2 rule books is a gateway.
Or one where you have to mitigate randomness using Euro-driven skills.
Yeah, this definitely seems a little bit, I mean, it's not the most complex game in the world, but it definitely seems a little bit advanced to be called a gateway game.
Right, you're doing the same 5 things, but it's how you do them. And there is no way this is a gateway game. Who was this person? That's ridiculous. And now let's rate the stats. Does this game deserve the stats it has, or can it do better, or potentially worse? Jessica, let's start with the game rating of 7.0. What do you think? Is 7 the right score for this game?
I don't think I can argue with that. I don't know that if someone asked me if I would have given it a 7, but I don't think I can argue with it being a 7.
Yeah, my answer is probably. Again, you consider all the randomness, the skills. Like, yeah, probably. I can't make heads or tails of like what or where this game is exactly. So yeah, probably 7. Cool. Whatever. All right. The ranking 1597 with that strategy rank of 863.
Right. And this one started out in the top 1,000 for ranking and in the top 500 for strategy ranking. And it has declined since then. So what do you think about where it started and where it is now?
I don't know. I assume it's because other games have come out that people have decided they like better. Other games that require more or less strategy. Unfortunately, here, I don't really have anything to compare it to because it's one of those games that, in my mind anyway, sits in kind of a unique place.
I always feel like it's hard to compare. Like, I can't even imagine ranking even just all the games that we have in our collection just because so many of them are just different. And yeah, I would agree. This one just kind of falls into its own category. And always with the strategy rankings, I never really quite know what people are using for their criteria there. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that seems right.
Yeah, I mean, it did drop in popularity. Some people thought the game was too easy. Others thought it was too random. So I guess maybe it just didn't hit enough of those sweet spots. And so people started replacing it with other games. What do you think of that complexity rating of 2.7? So this is kind of getting towards the heavier side of light, but not quite medium weight.
That sounds about right to me. I might have probably ranked it a little bit more complex than that. But I think it just depends on what your definition of complexity is.
Yeah, there are so many colloquialisms in this hobby. There's so many kind of like loose aspects of language. I agree with you. It depends on what you mean and kind of how the game unfolds. Like, does the game go very easy and smooth, or are you really struggling to keep up with all your resources and make them work for you? It kind of depends on how random the game wants to be in and out of your favor. Yeah, I probably would have given it a 3 more than a 2.7 myself. There is no way that this game is suitable for someone 10 years old. There's no way. It's too random. It requires too many thinky moments of how to move through that randomness. I would say 13 plus.
Oh gosh, I don't remember what it's like to be 10, but it doesn't seem like yeah, I'm trying to think of all the 10-year-olds I've known recently, and I don't think maybe like a really advanced 10-year-old. Yeah, that doesn't seem right to me. 13 sounds more correct. What'd you think about the player count?
I like it at 4 the best. I tend to agree with what everyone said. 2 is kind of whatever. It just doesn't bring that tension that you need in this game. 4, there is a lot of tension. The randomness hurts more when it doesn't go your way, but I think this game requires the tension of having those seal spaces getting eaten up and the river being leapfrogged. I like 4.
I agree with that. We played it at 2. We played it at 4. We haven't played it at 3, which is what a lot of people liked the best. But I definitely prefer it at 4 compared to 2. Just like you said, you need that tension. It just makes it so much more interesting. It's kind of boring with 2. And what do you think about the price of the game?
I mean, $20 new for any game these days is kind of hard to pass up, even if somebody was curious about this game or if they thought they might like it. For $20, I think most people are willing to pull the trigger on it just to try it. Used is even better of a price. I would say if this game entices you at all, even if you just want to see the potential shit show that this game can be, I mean, $15, most people are going to pay it. I would.
Yeah, I mean, what's that, like a movie ticket, right? So even if you only play it one time and you don't end up liking it, you almost got your money's worth just from that. And honestly, for the quality of the components, I'd say it's definitely worth that.
One more thing. I know we ragged on the game a lot, but there is a decent strategical game in there. And so for $15-20, you are going to experience that strategy play out. It's going to happen randomly, of course, but you do feel it. You do get it. And if you look at the game just from the strategic standpoint, there's a lot of interesting heavy choices to be made in a relatively short amount of time because the game doesn't take long to play. Totally worth $20 if it's something you're into.
All right, we're about ready to wrap things up here. Let's do some highlights and lowlights as we get ready to close out. So for me, my highlights, definitely the action grid. We all love the action grid. It's super unique. It's super clever. And also, I think it's surprisingly variable gameplay. And that's a highlight for me. I think it seems like a game where it's going to be the same thing over and over because there's only those 5 actions. But there's just a lot of variability, I guess, because of that randomness. And it makes it a different experience every time. What about highlights for you?
All right, so the things I would highlight for this game is, like you, it's got a very interesting action selection mechanism. I think that grid is really cool. It's definitely worth sitting down and experiencing at least once. I would say it has nice, subtle player interaction. I know people said there wasn't a lot of it, but where somebody puts their seals and, do you owe them a sparrow token and all that, it's subtle, but it's there. I like the subtle touch of it. It plays quick with a lot of heavy decisions and planning because you do have to plan a little and you are making heavy choices. And it wraps up in about an hour for 2 people. So you're talking maybe 90 minutes for 4. And the last thing I would highlight is that clever design of kind of pushing you to do a little bit of everything. I think it's clever. I think it's done in a clever way despite the randomness. For lowlights, I have 3 big ones. The 2 rule books, the information's all over the place. It's a mess. The randomness, again, it pushes the flow of the game. And even a game that doesn't last that long, it's still frustrating to know you're out of it halfway through because randomly things just didn't go your way. And finally, the last lowlight I have, there are huge imbalances in critical elements of the game. We're talking about the descendants, we're talking about the cards, we're talking about the spaces on the board. Some spots are better than others, and if you don't get to them, that pretty much does it for you. So those are my lowlights.
For me, I think thematically and aesthetically, it's just unappealing to me. I didn't mention this earlier, I should have, but the theme of it, it's boring to me. Maybe because I had never heard of this town and I don't even know what year it takes place in or whatever. Like, it's just a boring old town with an old church. Like, there's nothing appealing about it whatsoever.
The church piece, though, is pretty cool.
Yes, that is cool. But just generally speaking, there's nothing about this that I would have seen on a shelf and been like, yeah, I want that. But also, I think the costs are really frustrating, especially given the limited availability of actions. As you get to less and less options on that action grid, it's almost inevitable that at least once during the game, you're taking an action tile for an action you actually can't afford the cost of. So you're basically throwing away an action. And that happens far too often for my liking. So that's a low light for me.
All right, wrap it up in 1 sentence, Jess. Final thought.
Ulm is a unique game with relatively simple mechanics that will burn your brain trying to manage limited resources to maximize actions.
And I would say Ulm is a quintessential Euro game with as many clever, fulfilling elements as there are random, potentially frustrating ones.
So that was Ulm, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So send us comments wherever you're listening. Is this a game that's on your shelf? Tell us what you thought. Coming up, we're going to do another new segment we're calling Blast from the Past, where we revisit another game that we've talked about before.
Hey, it's Bryce. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you are, do me a favor. Take a second to follow the show and give us a 5-star rating from wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you're able to, a nice review helps as well. If you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble, smash those like, subscribe, and notification buttons. Not only will you never miss a show, subscribers get access to our exclusive bonus content found only on YouTube and Rumble. And if you really want to go that extra mile, sharing the show would be greatly appreciated. These small things are a big help, especially since we don't use social media. Every little bit counts, so thank you for any help you're willing to give. And now, back to the show.
It's time for our second news segment in today's episode, Blast from the Past, a segment where we talk about old games we featured on our old show. We bring those back to the table, and we have a little conversation about what we think about them now compared to what we thought about them then when we originally featured them on the show. If you want to listen to that full episode, you can find it on our YouTube channel under the old show. So Bryce, tell us about today's Blast from the Past.
Today's Blast from the Past is a game called Otys. This is a contract fulfillment, resource management, move maximization style game that takes place sometime in the distant future where the polar ice caps have melted and the world is covered in water. You play a team of divers who have to dive down deep and extract resources from the old world in order to put together new contraptions that your floating colony might need. The divers are going to be in a column, and some of them will be above the water, most of them will be below the water, and those will be the divers that you can activate on one of the many levels. When you activate the diver, they're going to give you an array of different things. Some will give you a resource of a specific color. You're trying to pair those up in order to fulfill your contracts. Others will help you move things around, including divers. You'll get batteries. You'll be able to buy and sell from a market. Just a whole slew of things that your diving team can do for you. And the trick with this game is knowing what divers to activate and when. You also have a series of sponsors on each level underneath the water surface that you'll be able to trigger when you activate those levels, and they're going to give you cool bonuses as well. You have ways to move those sponsors around to create chaos on the board and mess with your opponents a little, and the name of the game is to score 18 points before everyone else does.
This is actually one of our favorites, but before we dive into what we think about it now, let's take a quick listen to some of the things we said about it on the previous episode. One of the most amazing things about this game is that it's just a really fantastic atmosphere. The board is sort of interactive, the way you're sliding the pieces back and forth and up and down, and I don't know, it feels immersive in a way, even though it's not very thematic.
The thing I like most about this game is the variety between and within each game. I think if you were an experienced player, this is the type of game you would bust out if you still want to burn your brain a tad, but you don't want to go too hardcore. But at the same time, if you're more of a newer player and you have kind of a grasp on games already, this is a good push forward.
And one awesome thing about that is that for all the replay value you get, it's a bargain. It's only $22 right now. The thing that I like so very least about Otys is the player boards. They are so warped.
The only other thing I really didn't like personally about this game was because it's whoever gets to 18 points first, it doesn't give you a lot of time to really get your team going. The game can start to drag ass a little bit once you get into the 3 and 4 player category.
Couple years later, and it's still a bargain today. Going new for around the same price, but you can get a used copy for about $10, which is a really great deal. Bryce, what do you think? Have your thoughts on the game changed at all?
Yes and no. No in the sense of I still think this is a wonderful game for people of all skill levels. I think that experienced players, well, it's not the heaviest game, could still get something out of the puzzle that this game provides. And I think people who were dipping their toes into board games a little, this is a good next level one for them after some of the gateway games that they might have experienced. The idea that you don't really get your team going enough before you get to that 18 points, I disagree with that a little bit now that I'm, looking back and after we've played it recently. I think you just need to know the game more. And I think once you know the game and you know the divers and you know how they work, it's actually quite easy to get your team doing what you need it to do before you get to that end point.
I agree. I was actually thinking about that, listening to that particular comment from you, thinking how our perspective has evolved and how we both just got kind of better at the game and just building things up more quickly, so that it actually feels like that 18 points is sort of a perfect ending point. Because if you go much longer than that, it almost becomes stale because you've done everything there is to do by that point.
Yeah, you have opportunities throughout the game to upgrade your divers, and if you do, they give you little bonus things that are supposed to help you along in your game. They give you batteries and money and all these things you need. And I remember when we first started to play it, really struggling to get the timing of that down, because this really is a game about timing. When do I activate this diver? When do I upgrade this diver? When do I use that upgrade to my advantage? Those things just take time. And that's the point of getting it back to the table. But in experiencing the game now, fully fleshed out, fully aware of what we're doing, and better familiar with the timing of it, to me, the puzzle's still very fun. It hasn't gotten stale at all, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of replayability still in the game because of the random factor. I think because the sponsors are laid out in a random way and your divers start in a random configuration and you don't know what contracts you're going to be going for. There's just a lot of variety. It's not one of those games where it's like, okay, every time I play this game, I know I'm going to go for upgrading this guy first, and then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do that, because you don't necessarily have the opportunity to play it the same way every time. So you're adapting to what the game is giving you. And that's where the puzzle really is.
I think there are some divers, though, that if you don't know the game as well, you are drawn to want to upgrade first before the rest of them. I think it's a trap because, like you said, you don't quite know where that puzzle's going to be. So if you always go in going, okay, I'm going to upgrade the lady who makes all the other actions cheaper, that sounds like the good first move to make, but not always. It's really cool that for as often as we've played it, we still get to learn these little things and experience these new, oh, I see. This is not the time to do that yet. I really enjoy that about Otys.
I do too. I feel like every time I play it, recently especially, I'm like discovering things that I wouldn't have done before, because I think for a long time I was kind of in that trap of this is what I need to do first, and letting go of that and just being more adaptable to what's more available to you at the moment. I've had a lot of fun with it, and I've had some fun even with just trying things that I wouldn't have thought just because that's an option. I'm like, let me see what happens when I do this. And it's still fun. You still sometimes can even win when you try weird stuff like that. And even if you don't, it doesn't take away the fun of the game.
No, not at all. I remember one of the old critiques that people on Board Game Geek had about this one is that there wasn't enough player interaction. I think we disagreed with that point back in the old show. I don't know. I would have to go and listen. But the more I think about it, the more I disagree with it now. If I didn't before, I definitely do now. The factor of those things called X tokens, where you move the sponsors around, it was only the last time we played that we truly took advantage of the chaos that can bring to everybody else during the course of the game, because those sponsors give you benefits at certain levels that you might be relying on. And if you play those X tokens and mix them up before your opponent's next turn, that could throw their whole thing out of whack. So I think there's a lot of player interaction in this game, actually, and I think it can be quite devastating, which brings a whole new element of how do I solve this puzzle that's now ever changing on me.
That's a really good point. Actually, the first time we played, I remember the first diver that I upgraded was the blue one who gives you X tokens. But I think at that point, we didn't really understand the sponsors well enough for it to really affect anybody's game. The last time we played, you upgraded that diver. And I think there were probably 3 or 4 times in the game where I had a strategy where I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then you used an X token and you screwed everything up, and I had to completely reevaluate. And it took me like 3 or 4 turns to catch up to what I had been trying to do because of the changes that you made.
Now it's my turn to ask you. The boards are still very warped. It's been many years since we've bought this game. We've played it a bunch. The boards are still very, very, very warped. Have you softened on it? Have you just accepted it?
I'm actually amazed because I was sure that they would just be unplayable very, very soon. And they're still in kind of exactly the same condition they were when we got them. So I guess in that regard, like, they haven't gotten worse, and probably will be able to still get another several years of play out of them. So I guess I can't complain too much.
Well, it helps that we live in kind of a dry climate control our house. We take care of our games. But yeah, the warp board it does suck because it's designed in a way where it wants you to put pieces in certain places where you can glide it across the bottom and along the side of the board, but you can't when it's warped.
Yeah, it's like a dual layer thing, but stuff doesn't really fit the way that it should because of that warping. So that's a little bit frustrating, but I think I've gotten used to kind of the alternate of how we have to make it work.
Do you think the contract cards are a little plain? Because that was another complaint I remember. To me, it doesn't bother me. I think the puzzle of how to fulfill the contracts is more of where it's at than the variety of the contracts themselves.
To be honest, I don't think I've ever really looked at them. The last time that we played, actually, I remember looking and being like, oh, I built a weird flashlight thingy. Like, you're looking at the artwork trying to like describe what it is because they're these weird, futuristic machines and stuff. And that was the first time I think I noticed that it's a lot of the same pictures. Right. But I think I'm just more focused on the puzzle of the game than on the dumb pictures on the contracts.
So fair to say that we still both really enjoy this one. It is ranked 2028 overall, and here's a heartbreaking statistic for you. As of right now on Board Game Geek, this has a 6.9, meaning it is below the 7-point threshold that the average gamer looks at to consider whether or not they will even bother with a game, whether or not they'll read the back of the box. Otys falls short of that. I think that's an absolute shame.
Yeah, well, and it's so barely under, but I think this is an underrated game. I think it was back then, and it still is now, and it breaks my heart a little bit, but that's all right. More Otys for us, I guess.
Definitely was overlooked. I think a lot of people slept on this one. I think there's a lot more here to discover than I think people gave it credit for when it came out 8 years ago. I say for $10 used, hell, $23 new, this is one that I would definitely recommend people check out, even if they were heavier gamers. I know we're trying to avoid recommendations and stuff, but out of all the games we've ever talked about, if I had to make a list of just absolutely underrated, totally missed games in their day, this is on that list.
It would be on my list too. I mean, we have probably over 200 games still, and that's dwindled down from what it was, and this is still a favorite. This has been a favorite. This was one of the very first in our collection, and it has never not been a favorite.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know what more I can say about it. If anything, my opinion of the game has only gotten stronger. I've only rooted more deeply in my resolve that this game is excellent. Is it the deepest game? Is it the most strategically complex? No, but the puzzle is rather enjoyable, and I think there's enough cool things going on the board where you're sliding the divers and you're moving things around that it makes it interesting and fun, and it's just one of those games, for me at this point anyway, where it's just a joy to play.
That just about wraps up the show today. What do you think about Otys? Let us hear your thoughts about Otys, about Ulm, about the show, about anything. Leave us a comment wherever you're listening. We'd love to hear what you think. Bryce, what do we have coming up in episode 3?
Next time we come back, Jess, we're going to do something a little different, maybe a little head turning, maybe some eyebrow raising. We're doing a top 10 list, but we're not going to talk about games we like. Instead, we're going to do 10 popular games that we did not enjoy. Should be weird, should be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I get that hate mail coming in.
Perhaps, I don't know. Maybe we're not as alone as we think. Anyway, this has been the Back to the Table podcast. I am Bryce, that is Jessica, and we will catch you later.
Bye-bye.